Yeah.
Hello.
You doing okay?
I'm doing well. How are you?
Pretty good. Can't complain. I didn't take you away from anything too important, did I?
Nope.
Yeah. Well, first and foremost, thank you for coming on the show. Greatly appreciated. Of
Thank you for the invite.
course. How's everything been going with regard to like COVID and everything and your training?
It hasn't really impacted me too much, even though I'm here in California. I've had some really great tools in my back pocket that's allowed me to continue training consistently. So,
Mhm. Are you able to go into it? Like, what do you mean by tools?
there's a couple private gyms that have remained open. They're personal training facilities, so I've still had access to full facilities.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a huge benefit. So where are you like competing now? You're in the figure in IFBB
Yes, yeah,
figure?
I'm still in figure.
Okay. And how did you get into like training and nutrition and fitness in general, like in your life?
I kind of, well, so I was an athlete when I was in high school and the beginning of college.
Hmm.
Um, took a back seat from all of that when I had my son as a freshman in college.
Hmm.
So it really took away from my ability to focus on my own health. And when I started to get back into the swing of things, it was actually I was just kind of playing around in the gym, but I started doing Spartan races,
Okay.
and
Yeah.
that was kind of my way back into everything. It allowed me to see that I didn't have a lot of upper body strength.
Hmm.
um, so I started training with specific intention to build that upper body strength and be a little bit more competitive.
Hmm.
And somebody started asking me around the gym if I was competing in a show. And my initial reaction is what I think most naive young women think when they hear, "Oh, are you doing a bodybuilding show?" You're like, "Ew," like,
Yeah.
no. Um, and then I
That,
really looked into it, and I was like, I could try that. And
that,
since then,
so
it's just history.
I was just kind of curious when you say Spartan races, like what does that entail? Like, so I have a like an idea of what that is, but I don't really know like all the specifics that kind of go into it. Like, how would you like describe it?
Well, so I saw them. My friends were talking about them. They did them here in Sacramento, and it's like the Tough Mudder, but to another degree. So I decided to jump all in, and my first race that I did was the Beast, which was 13 plus miles. So it's a minimum of 13 miles of running, and then
Mhm.
25 obstacles.
Wow.
So in the midst of the running, you're stopping and you're doing pull-ups, you're climbing up to the top of a rope, you're monkey bars, you're dragging or you're carrying buckets of rocks up a hill and down a hill. And um, it's put on, I want to say, by a military group. I want to say it's the Army. But so if you fail at any of the obstacles, you have to do burpees.
Oh wow.
And
Okay.
it slows you down. And so when I did my first one, I finished in the top 100 women of my age, and there was about 23,000 competitors.
Well, that I mean that's
So
really good. And it's just for you going your first time in.
yeah, I trained only running because I was a track athlete. So for me, I was like,
Okay.
oh, I can run. I was running 8 miles a day. Um, and then the obstacles are where I really was like, okay,
Mhm.
if I could get better at that, I can be competitive in the big picture. And that year they were doing like, if you won a race or you finished in the top two or three in a race, you qualified to go to their big race, which was in Hawaii. And so I was like, I want to try and do that.
I want to go to Hawaii. That's
Yeah. And then I found bodybuilding in the
Mhm.
intermittent and the Spartan races. I still ran a few actually. And I have, over the course of my bodybuilding career, still jumped into one or two
Mhm.
without even training for them, which is terrible.
I
Um,
mean, that I'm just thinking like it sounds like you've had the stamina part of it already intact from the running. From my point of view, I would be definitely afraid of like just getting so exhausted that I wouldn't be able to finish. So
the only one that really got me was when I did the Ultra Beast, which is a half marathon. So you end up doing about 20, I want to say it was 26 miles. Um, and it was up in Tahoe. So the elevation really killed me. And I
okay.
didn't really train for it. It was in between my shows. And I just
Mhm.
went and jumped in. And by the end of it, my fingers were purple, my lips were purple, my legs were swollen. I couldn't get, like when I tried to change out of the wet, cold clothes, because there's a water aspect too.
Mm.
Um, I couldn't even get like my regular pants, my comfy pants on because my legs were so swollen because of the altitude change and the cold.
Wow, that's yeah, that I mean altitude training is huge if you're like embarking on something like that because it can really take
I
you
wasn't the
down.
brightest. I kind of just was like, I could do it.
Well, I mean, hey, I mean, if you can even get, through it at all, that's that's impressive. So what would you say like majority of the people have been training for that or more a lot of them are like you where they just jump in?
I think the majority of people that do the Spartan races tend to train for them, or they're, marathon runners trying to branch out and do something different. I know a lot of people that actually specifically train for them,
Mhm.
because it is very intense.
Mhm. Yeah. I mean, with a name like Ultra Beast, I mean, it has to
Yeah.
be, right? There's not, I mean, they couldn't have picked a more intense name, right?
Yeah.
That's funny. Okay, so and you kind of got into like getting your upper strength built up, and that's kind of how you got into bodybuilding and so forth. So
Yeah.
as fitness in general, how did you transition into the competitive aspect of bodybuilding?
I think the competitor's always been there, especially with my track background.
Mhm.
Um, I do believe that the competitor has always been inside of me. I don't like to lose. I don't like to not be my best or do my best. So I think
Right.
that with a lot of people, when you find competing and you find bodybuilding, you already have that spark to compete inside of you, whether it's any other aspect of your life, it's a part of who you are.
Sure.
And I think that's usually what typically makes competitors and bodybuilders thrive. If you don't, in particular, like pushing yourself and having other people that you're like, okay, these judges are looking at all of us and they're trying to pick the best, and you're showcasing your best.
Mhm.
If you don't have that internal drive to take things to the next level, you're not going to love competing. You're not going to love the stage. You're not going to love the bodybuilding world as a whole.
Mhm.
So I definitely think that that's kind of always been there.
Yeah, it's well, it definitely can't be for the money, right? Because it's not like
No, nope.
it's probably the only sport that I know that you like generally like 90% of the competitors pay more in than they get out of it financially, especially at
Oh
the
yeah.
pro level, right?
Hmm.
So when did you get your pro card? Like how long after starting your NPC career?
So I actually was my first MPC show was 6 years ago in November. So I just passed that. It took me 4 years to go pro. I
Mhm.
qualified actually nationally with my first show. And little did I know, I definitely wasn't prepared to go to nationals, but I did anyways. I took top three at USA's 4 years in a row. And I tried junior USA's. Didn't plan that very well because I flew in and barely made it to check-ins, almost missed check-ins,
Oh, wow.
because it was my first flight to the East Coast for a
Hmm.
show, which just ill planning, lack of
Hmm.
planning and understanding in the time frame and how your body reacts to flights.
Sure, sure.
So I didn't do very well there. And then I turned around after my last stunt at USA's and did the amateur Olympia,
Hmm.
and I got my pro card there. The first
Okay.
year that they opened it up here in the US.
Okay, awesome. Yeah, I just had a buddy. He competed in the amateurs. He didn't amateur Olympia. He didn't get his pro card, but he did really well. So,
It's such
um,
an amazing show to experience
yeah,
as a whole in itself.
yeah. It's speaking of Olympias, and well, we'll get to that. So you're in being in figure. It's like it's becoming more like figure has really grown. Like as far as the division, it's I don't know, man. Without bodybuilding open, I'd say figure is very like probably the most stacked, one of the most stacked divisions there
Oh
is.
yeah, the athletes are intense.
Yeah, it's hard to like crack, as far as like the professionals are, like to crack that top five is very hard to do. That's not an easy endeavor. So have you like thought, are you gonna just stay with figure? Or are you thinking of like going anywhere else?
No, I don't foresee myself switching divisions. Figure has my heart.
Hmm.
It is, I actually, when I started in figure. I never
Hmm.
dabbled in anything else. Had wellness been out 5, 6 years ago, I might have considered it because, again, I didn't have a lot of upper body. I was predominantly legs from being a track athlete. But the posing of figure, the graceful stage presence, the art, balance, symmetry, it's the appeal for me. And moving up in divisions would require dabbling into a lot of stuff that I don't want to. I
Hmm.
prefer being more on the feminine side of things
Hmm.
and having that access to the gracefulness that is figure.
And there's a lot involved in trying to put on that kind of muscle,
Mm-hmm.
for a female especially. Yeah, so it's interesting. So you never did bikini at all or
Oh no,
anything
my
like that?
legs have always been,
Too big.
22 to 24 inches, so they would never have survived in bikini.
So I should have asked you this, I guess, from the get-go. When you said you did track, for some reason in my mind, I automatically thought of long distance. I don't know why. Were you doing more like sprinting? Because that's where I see men and women have like larger quads and like larger legs.
So ironically, I actually started in long distance,
Okay.
but I settled in middle distance. So
Hmm.
300 hurdles was one of my things. The 400 and the 800. 800 predominantly was my race, and I went to state with that. It
Okay.
was, you have to have endurance, but at the same time, be able to sprint.
Mhm.
And so I think the quads for me a lot are genetic. My mother
Gotcha.
had large quads. My dad was a football player, so he was a bigger guy. Genetics plays a huge role in bodybuilding, whether people want to acknowledge it or not. You
Sure.
can't you can outwork poor ethic, but you can't outwork good genetics. So if you're
Mhm.
not putting in the work and you're not putting in the time, your genetics can fall off. You're not going to
Right.
do well. But if you have both, you have an advantage. And I definitely, coming into this sport as an amateur, I knew that I had genetics on my side.
Mhm. Yeah, that's interesting. Yeah, and I mean, genetics is huge. Like I genetically have a couple of things just stand out. Like I have large shoulders and I have large calves, and it's like, and people always ask, well, how do you get that? And it's like I do the same workouts that you do.
Mhm.
It's just
Where
mine
your
just
body likes
happen.
to grow.
Yeah, yeah, that's it. It's like I do nothing different, and they're always like asking for something like like
Tricks.
sexy, something like interesting, and it's like, sorry guys, nothing interesting. I can tell you, if I want to be honest with you, nothing interesting.
Mhm.
Do you get that a lot? Like, do people ask you like how get your legs to that level and so forth?
Oh yeah, definitely. And don't get me wrong, I've put a lot of attention and effort into my legs.
Mhm.
Just because you have a strong asset doesn't mean you neglect it.
Right.
And in order to get that next level, you still have to put in the work. For me, I've learned how to detail my legs. When I started, they were just big, solid. Like you'll see soccer players, you'll see volleyball players, they have solid legs. And creating definitely accenting the different muscle heads in your quads takes art.
Mm.
Same thing when I was a runner, I didn't have great hamstrings. I had huge quads, but minimal hamstrings. So I had to build up my hamstrings, really learn how to train them properly to isolate, take the quads out of the equation. So it's been a process, and I feel like I have gained a lot of insight and valuable information that I'm able to share. But I definitely never take away from the fact that I genetically have always had larger quads. So it's not
Yeah.
about building for me, it's about detail. It's about, I can teach someone how to hit the different heads. That doesn't mean their quads are going to grow like mine do.
Right, of course. No, definitely for sure. So if you were, so I have the same issue with like hamstrings, right? Like my quads are dominant. And I find that to be like with most people in general, whether they're, larger or smaller, the quads always seem to overpower the hamstrings. So if you had to give I don't know, like three exercises that you would like suggest people do, like to really hit their
Hamstrings.
hamstrings, what would you suggest?
Straight leg deadlifts are honestly my number one go to.
Hmm.
Positioning your toes differently when you do them. And
So do you put something under your feet like when you do that? Sometimes I'll see people do that, like lift their toes with something and
yeah, you can lift your toes, you can lift your heels, but it's more so your foot placement. So you have your standard feet together, you have your feet, standard width apart, but toes in and toes out also helps to hit the different heads and really create that connection with your hamstrings. It allows you to hit all three parts of it. So deadlifts are probably straight leg deadlifts are one of my favorites. Standard deadlifts, you do engage your glutes a little bit more. But I typically, my go-tos are usually your lying hamstring curls, um, straight leg deadlifts, and then probably close and high on the leg press machine, really taking that focus and driving through your heel.
So why would you do like do you see a different let me ask you another way. Do you see a difference between lying leg curls as opposed to standing like leg curls with the machine wise?
Yeah.
Mhm.
Um, I think the biggest thing is if you can learn to keep your hips down, um, you disengage your glutes and you
Mhm.
really focus on pulling through the hamstring. If you're not controlling your hips are going to lift up and you're actually going to engage your glutes as well. And your quads will actually kick in too because they're pushing off of the pad. So I think that once you learn how to, whether it's some people will put a pad under their hips and focus on keeping them against that pad. For
Mhm.
me, I arch my back and I push my hips down, driving my hips into the pad that I'm laying on.
Mhm.
Allows me to pull more weight with just my hamstrings.
Do you lift up like with your upper body when you say you drive your
Yes.
you do, okay.
Yeah, I keep that way. You keep your hips completely out of it. You keep your glutes out of it and your quads out of it.
Okay, great. Well, I'm sure some people that are listening to this will probably appreciate that because I know that's a huge thing for a lot of people, especially women, but I mean men as well. Let me ask you this to kind of change course a little bit. Did you get a chance to? I'm gonna put you on a little bit of a spot, but did you get a chance to see the Olympia this year?
I was there.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Um, I mean, were you competing? And I'm sorry, I apologize
No,
if
I was just
okay.
watching.
Okay. I thought so, but I was like, well,
I'm as
maybe
much a fan of the sport as I am an athlete.
okay, that's great. Yeah, sometimes I do make mistakes. I was like, I didn't think you were there, but like on stage, but I was like, I could make a mistake. So,
Nope,
uh,
not
th-
yet.
so how was that before I get into like the actual competition? Like, how was the experience of traveling there with all the, everything going on?
Well, I've traveled to Florida 3 times this year now.
Mhm.
Traveling is honestly, it's not that hard. You get through the airports a lot faster.
I'm sure.
Um,
Yeah.
it's less headaches,
Hmm.
but
How was the production like of the
beautiful.
show? Yeah.
Tim Garner and his team, Wings of Strength, they did a phenomenal job, especially having transferred the whole show from Vegas to Orlando in 4 weeks, 5 weeks.
Yeah.
I mean, it was a production that I don't think anybody could have pulled off other than them. Like they're phenomenal. What they did is phenomenal. I actually am quite biased. I am huge on doing Wings of Strength shows. They're my favorite shows.
Mhm.
Tim and his team take absolute wonderful care of the athletes, whether you're an amateur or a pro. Their stages are always beautifully lit. The detail, the attention to detail from his staff is just phenomenal.
Mhm.
So having done his shows as an athlete and then watched his show in the audience, watched what they were able to do with the entire Olympia production, just absolutely phenomenal.
Yeah, I actually agree. And like a couple of things. One thing is I thought it was so much more professionally done this year than ever before. And I wasn't sure how it was gonna be because, I mean, it is bodybuilding. It's not the NFL. There's money there, but it's not like that. And then, now there's not going to be like that many sponsors and so forth. So
Mm-hmm.
so for them to be able to get it in pay-per-view and
Yeah.
be able to put that kind of effort into it, and the result was really nice. I mean, it was literally like you were watching like a mainstream professional athletic event. And yeah,
Yeah.
I thought that was awesome. I'm also super
And
go ahead, I'm sorry. I don't
and
mean
Jake Wood and his team with Tim and everybody, I mean, the athletes got more this year
Mhm.
in money prizes than any other year.
Yeah.
And with a year like this year with COVID and the shows being cut or canceled or pushed back, I mean, it's amazing to see the value they're putting back into this sport. And
Mhm.
they're really trying to bring it back to the forefront of society and bringing that health conscious mindset back, that bodybuilding's not the bad stereotype that it got, that it's
Mhm.
beautiful, it's art, um it's a production, it's
Yeah.
a show.
Yeah. And like, I like how you said it, to bring it back, because there was a time where it was, very popular. Like in certain countries, like I don't know if you've got a chance to look at Big Ram's page, but he put up a post, or his team put up a post of him coming back to Egypt, I believe, and how he was treated. He was treated like you would treat LeBron James here, because bodybuilding is so big over there. And it's like, and it used to be like that way in the States and other places. And as far as your feedback, as far as being artistic and everything, there was a time where they were even doing like double, like couples bodybuilding. I don't know if you
Hmm.
recall that, where there was like, you could have partners, and they would do like more artistic type of production as well. So there's a lot there that can be harnessed. It just needed someone that really loved the sport.
Yeah.
And I think that's what we got with Jake Wooden. So what did you think about the show? Let's start with like your division figure. Like, what are your viewpoints on it? Like, if you I don't mean to put you on too much on a spot, but anything you got back from it, as far as like, the top three, you feel like they judged it correctly? You feel like Sydney should have won? What
Yeah.
do you think?
I i think the placements were reflective of what they're looking for in the sport.
Yeah.
I think, you know, Sid's one of those athletes that she's an all-around athlete. She's an all-around representative of the sport, and for someone to dethrone her, it's either she's going to have to come in really off, or someone's going to have to really step their game up. Because she is the embodiment of what figure is currently, just like Latoria was for several years.
Yeah.
She was the embodiment of figure for a long time, until the judging criteria shifted. And that's the beauty of this sport, is
Mhm.
it's ever changing.
Yeah.
The criteria is not solid and completely defined, in that it does allow subjectivity. um, but I do love the fact that when you look at the top five this year, there's a clear, um, concise declaration of what figure looks
Mhm.
like currently. And there have been, like last year, and the year prior, the top five wasn't very, they weren't all similar.
Mhm.
So you were left to question, what exactly are they looking for? And I
Right.
truly feel like they have finally ironed out with their judging panel what they're looking for in each division. I'm excited to see what the wellness division brings next year, and how that even more so differentiates the divisions and what they're looking for.
Yeah. Yeah, a friend of mine, Zenobia, and I think you know her too, right? Because I
Yeah,
see that
she's
you,
amazing.
yeah, she went from, if I'm not mistaken, and I could be wrong, but I believe she didn't even make it to like after prejudging last year. And I know she said that she was going through she might have got sick or something like that, if I remember correctly. It was a while ago. And this year, I mean, what a huge difference, right?
Yeah,
Cracks top five, right? I believe gets fourth place, if I'm not
yeah.
mistaken. And I
Hmm.
mean, she looked phenomenal. I mean, you could have easily given her third if you wanted to.
Yeah,
So and again, like you said, it's like more streamlined. You can see like Sydney, and then I don't remember who got second.
Natalia,
Yes, entirely. And then
beautiful shape.
and they're very similar structure. Obviously, Sid, got an edge on them, but
Hmm.
they still have that same flow. So it's like, so it's
Hmm.
not that
And their
question.
conditioning, when you look at the top five, the conditioning across the top five in figure, um, was, I mean, phenomenal. They were all very conditioned, very tight. Um, their individual routines were all extremely graceful, poised, well presented. So it was good to see that they were definitely looking at a certain shape, a certain condition. Like I said, it really streamlined what they're looking for moving forward, I think.
Yeah,
And yeah,
gotcha.
Nicole did amazing. She, from last year, her conditioning from last year to this year, and it just mind blowing
Oh
what
yeah,
she did
total
this year.
change. Yeah,
And the
total
fact
change.
that it was her third large show of the year, like,
Right, right.
two first place finishes at what was it, Savannah and then New York
Hmm.
Pro,
Yeah.
and then rolling right into the Olympia and cracking the top five. I mean, I don't think other than Natalia, I don't think anyone can say they had such a stellar year like
Hmm.
she did.
Hmm. I think it was very smart of her to do a couple of shows before the Olympia and then just kind of take that momentum in, especially since
Mhm.
last year it was tough for her. I think rolling in with all that momentum really helped and kind of kept her
Mhm.
on track, I'm sure. So, I'm supposed to do a show with her, believe next Sunday. So I will be asking her all those prudent questions.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I don't want to recap the whole Olympia, but like what did you think about physique? That was very controversial.
Men's physique,
I'm sorry, women's physique. That,
women's physique. Um, I was a little shocked.
mhm.
Um, I didn't anticipate the change up.
Yeah.
And I don't think most people did, just because of, I mean, everything all included. Like you look at the qualified athletes that competed. Um, I didn't foresee that, but when I watched it, the young lady that won, I do remember watching her posing routine, thinking her glute hamstring tie-in was just absolutely from another world. Like every muscle fiber you could see. Um, it was just, I mean, the conditioning was out of this world.
Yeah.
And that I think is really what set her over the top. I think that her and the other Natalia in women's physique have
Mhm.
very similar um, shapes.
Mhm.
So I think that you are seeing a little bit more balance and a little bit more symmetry with women's physique as well,
Yeah.
but less freaky proportions, I guess you could say, in
Mhm.
in other terms, more
Yeah.
attainable physiques. And
Yeah.
if they're trying to streamline the sport, that might have been a swaying factor in the way things kind of transpired.
Yeah,
But
that's interesting that you mentioned that. I never thought about it that way. That is a different way to think about it because so for me, clearly, I thought Shanique won that division. She looks the same as
yeah,
she did before. She won
mhm,
before. I saw no reason, but she lost by 1 point, which means that judges were considering, like they were going back and forth, right,
mhm.
between her and Sarah, but I can't remember her last
That's her
name.
name, Sarah. Yeah.
Yeah. And so, but that is an interesting viewpoint that maybe Shanique was too dramatic and they wanted to kind of bring it back to a physique that others could compete with.
When you look at
Mhm.
Sarah, now look a couple years ago when Dana was still
Oh
when
yeah,
Dana started the division, or you look at Julia.
sure.
Um, I mean, the first two women's physique athletes were proportions that are more common.
Hmm.
Shanique's shape, her muscle bellies, just everything is beautiful.
Unreal. Yeah.
Everything, but it is very unreal, and it is very hard to compete with her physique
Yeah.
because, I mean, some of our figure girls don't even have waists that tiny,
Right. Right. Very
and our
true.
muscles sure as heck aren't that big. Um, so if they're bringing it back to a more realistic, competitive, let's really see tit for tat who's
Hmm.
comparable. This might do that.
Yeah.
And like I said, I love Shanique. I think that like her shape is just out of this world.
Hmm.
She is one of those people that I think will forever be in the history of bodybuilding and forever be a face of the perfect physique.
Yeah. 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 Well, supposedly she has retired. She said she wants to have a
Mhm.
family. Excuse me. So, we'll see. I think at some point she's going to come back. Just,
Oh yeah.
it's hard to get, essentially, like, she's at the very top of her game. I know she lost, but it's hard to stay away.
And she's young. She's very
Yes.
young. She has her whole life ahead of her. To say she doesn't have start her family and come back, who knows?
Yeah.
She is, like I said, she'll forever be one of those physiques that's just
Yeah.
admired and worshipped, so to say.
Absolutely. Absolutely. What'd you think about Big Ramy winning? Let you get
I
hydrated
called
there.
it. I called it. I
Oh,
knew
you
the moment
called
he
it?
walked out on stage that he was going to take it.
And he
I
got,
think honestly, the posing that they did really is what drug it in, because the longer they posed, the better he got,
Mhm.
and the tighter he got, and the harder he got. Whereas others they'd get weaker, they wouldn't control their core as much, or um, just the sweating, the energy that it takes. He was the most conditioned posing, and as he kept posing, the lines just got deeper, and I mean, it was his time. He's
Yeah.
worked really, really hard in this industry and given everything to it.
Mhm.
To see him come out on top was really, really cool.
Yeah, it's a huge change from the past years, right? And if I'm not mistaken, they gave him a special invite this year. So that
Yeah.
was a huge, that's a big deal, because if he doesn't get that special invite, he doesn't win this
Hmm.
Olympia. So not only, like, everything kind of lined up just right for him. Like, his prep was great, he got
Hmm.
the invite, he won the show. But I thought, to me, and I'm in Tennessee, so Brandon Curry is Jim, and he lives here.
Hmm.
And I thought, to me, one of the biggest stories was Brandon Curry, because even
Hmm.
though he didn't win, he beat the person that everyone thought was going to
Was
beat
gonna
him,
win.
which was Phil
Hmm.
Heath. So,
Hmm.
like, I think this kind of, like, personally, I think if Phil Heath is getting, that third place, if I'm not mistaken, third place. Um, at this point, he's not probably not going to, hit that top, the championship ever again. I don't know. It's possible. Of course, anything's possible, but
I was gonna say, never
yeah,
count him out.
yeah.
They call him the gift for a reason. I will say that. Um, when watching it, I didn't see his heart on stage.
Hmm.
Normally, when Phil steps on stage, his heart's there.
Hmm.
And I don't know personally if anything else was going on behind the scenes or anything like
Hmm.
that, but
Sure.
um, when he won, his heart was in it, and you could see it in his face that he knew it was his.
Yeah.
Um, I didn't see that this year, and his shape is unreal too.
Hmm.
Brandon Curry has a great shape too,
Yeah.
but that's where you get the switch too. Rami's his shape is different. So it's not
Yeah.
a streamlined shape. It's not going to be, who can come in bigger than Rami next year. It's going to
Yeah.
be who can beat him with conditioning, with posing.
Right.
So men's open is a new world for me. I actually just started getting into it over the last 2 years.
Okay.
When I
Yeah.
started this sport, it was all figure. That's all I
Gotcha.
knew.
Gotcha.
But I worked with Chris Dim in the past, and him and I had a couple conversations because I was at the Olympia,
Hmm.
just in passing. But it's ever changing in
Yeah.
their division what they're looking for, whether it's the biggest or the most symmetrical,
Right.
or it's so it'll be interesting to see how it plays out next year.
Yeah, I mean, you can't really compete with Big Ramy on size, so it's like you almost have to beat him and it's somewhere else, like.
Exactly, it's going to be what it is that wins next year.
Mhm.
What is it going to be?
Yeah,
So.
I think you're right as far as the heart is concerned, because he did. I didn't notice it, like, during the competition, but when it was announced that he got third, I think Phil looked very content. He kind of, he didn't seem
Mhm.
disappointed. He seemed content, and I think that's kind of like what you're alluding to as well. Just kind
Mhm.
of, his heart wasn't really in it, so I definitely could see that. Did you notice anything as far as the stomach hernia that he was having when he lost to Roden? People were saying that he had surgery, but it still looked bad. Did you notice his a stomach extension or distension, I should say, anything like that
I
live?
so I think the only thing that I noticed was the controlling of the breathing.
Okay,
The
so maybe that
more,
was it.
but that would be posing conditioning, you know.
Sure.
I know for me, when one of the shows that I did, we did, I think, 12 minutes straight of quarter turns.
Mhm.
And it was my pro debut, and I thought I was going to die because I was not conditioned to do 12 minutes of straight quarter turns.
Mhm.
Um, and I mean, they drilled them. They
Yeah.
drilled them. So if it's his first year back and it's his first real show back
Mhm.
after taking, a year and a half, 2 years off, it's understandable to
Yeah.
not be able to control your core as much because your posing is, especially, I couldn't even imagine doing it. That's one of the reasons I won't switch to women's physique is their
Mhm.
posing is just insane hard.
Yeah.
um, I love figure posing because it's beautiful,
Uh,
but it is nowhere near as grueling as women's physique or men's bodybuilding or men's physique or classic physique. I mean, the posing they go through, it requires a whole nother level.
yeah.
So I didn't notice necessarily the hernia itself.
Mhm.
I would say just controlling his core on his breathing
Sure.
was what I noticed a little bit. And then, um, but again, I would die. So my hat
Yeah.
is off to all of them for it.
Same here. I like just the people don't understand how difficult it is to pose and to hold your breathing and then do it for over and over and over
Oh yeah.
again, for an extended period of time. So, so enough with the Olympia, back to like your endeavors. So what are you thinking with, this year? Well, I was going to say next year, but we're already next year. So, so what do you think about this year in 21? Do you have any plans? Are you thinking of competing? You
I
know?
definitely will compete. Um, After New York Pro, I talked to Sandy and Tyler, and I had a really good one-on-one with both of them. And basically got the feedback I needed.
Mhm.
They don't want me to add a bunch of size, so that was amazing feedback for me.
Yeah.
Growing is hard for me, so
It's hard for a lot of
um,
people. Yeah.
yeah, no, my body likes to stay smaller.
Mhm.
And so for me, it was a really great entry to an off season.
Yeah.
I've maintained about 10 pounds from stage weight, so
Mhm.
I'm never one to get really big. Even in my off season, I can eat
Mhm.
whatever I want. And I
Wow.
mean, within reason, I actually still eat 99% of my meals properly.
Yeah.
Um,
Well,
but
10 pounds from stage is, I mean, is great. I mean, that's not,
yeah,
that's
I wanted 15, but I'm having a hard time this off season as I've increased my food, my metabolism's increased with it. So, um, gaining weight is my struggle, not
I see.
losing it.
Yeah.
But I train really hard. Every session, I give everything I can. So the food that I intake, I put to use. So I can say that I'm happy with that. Looking at 2021, reevaluating a new coach, lining up a new program, and looking at shows has something that I actually kind of just started doing, really taking a look at this week. So
Okay. So yeah, you're just beginning that process.
I have a couple in mind, but the real question for me is, do I want to do an earlier season and risk it, or do I want to wait and do a later season?
Mhm.
Um, Last year I started prep in December because I applied for the Arnold, and even though I didn't get it, I pretty much stayed on prep from December until the end of September, the beginning of September. So
Yeah.
it was a very
That's a
long.
long prep.
hmm
Yeah.
So
Yeah, it's tough, like, to figure out when you want to, be at your best, because it's kind of like if you keep a prep that long, it kind of goes up and down. You can't really like peak all the time. So yeah. Do you get involved in like training or coaching or helping people out at all? Is that your thing?
it is.
Hmm.
I have coached a few people, a handful of people, because I have a full-time career and I am a mom. It is
Yep.
something that I do on the side every once in a while.
Mhm.
Training, I was doing regularly about 2 years ago. I stopped when COVID hit, and it freed up a lot of time with my son. And so
Gotcha.
it's something I've thought about doing again because I was doing about 5 clients a week,
Hmm.
2 to 3 times a week for each client. And so outside of my personal training, I was still in the gym, and between the gym and my work and then training clients, I
Right.
was gone from 6 a.m. till 9 p.m. every day.
Oh yeah, that's tough when
So
you have you know,
yeah.
a young
So
son.
my son has really enjoyed me not coaching and training. I still do it on the side. I actually more so work with posing clients.
Okay.
The art of competing is more fun for me, so I do that a lot locally.
Mm,
Um, and then if people want to come train, I will work with people one-on-one. I don't do a lot of online stuff anymore because I was for a little bit. And again, I have a full-time career, so
yeah.
it's really hard to juggle 4 different things at once for me and really give my best to
Sure.
everything that I'm doing.
Sure. Well, yeah. I mean, one of the reasons was why I asked you is, I am going to put your contact down, information down in this video. But I guess you can make the decision on who you want to take on
Yeah.
and who you don't. So.
If people have questions or they need help with
Mhm.
posing, posing is actually probably what I do the most. And I do that in person as well as through FaceTime sessions. So that's probably my biggest and what I enjoy the most in helping others. When it comes to nutrition, I mean, people are more than welcome to ask me questions, and I will
Mhm.
help as much as I can just because I love to help
Mhm.
and teach. And I truly believe that whether it's a bodybuilder or somebody that's trying to get better health, the more tools and resources they have, the more people they can ask questions to, the more information that they have, the better decisions they can make.
Yeah.
So I am always here for questions to help, but I can refer them to other coaches.
There you go. You can do that too. Yeah, I mean, health is huge now. Like with COVID, it's the one thing that I didn't expect. I expected a lot of things when COVID hit, but I did not expect people to start like caring about how healthy they are. And I feel like it's definitely increased. I mean, even though the gyms have
Yeah.
been shut down, I see a lot more people walking outside. Like a lot of people at my job have now like all of a sudden decided they wanted to, become healthy, like before they didn't. Now all of a sudden they want it. So yeah, definitely it's a big thing now to be healthy, not just to aesthetically look good,
Yeah.
but also,
Nutrition's where it's at. So
yeah.
I'm not a firm believer in going to the doctor and taking medicine in
Hmm.
anything other than feeding your body properly,
Right.
getting your body the nutrients that it needs naturally to build your immune system to fight off viruses. Um, Throughout COVID, I never stopped going to the gym.
Hmm.
I was around people. Knock on wood, didn't get sick.
Right. Right.
um, but I'm healthy, and even in the midst of being on prep, when your immune system is naturally lower, and you're more susceptible to colds, most of the people that I know that did preps last year didn't get sick.
Yeah.
So it really goes to show that if you're living a healthy lifestyle, even if they caught it and didn't know,
Mhm.
the impacts of severe colds like COVID are less. They're
Sure, sure.
minimal.
Yeah, well, I mean, and I believe that to be true because the opposite is true, right? And the doctors say that the opposite is true.
Mhm.
If you're unhealthy, it will hit you harder. That
Yeah.
and that's something that the high level scientists will tell you. But
Mhm.
so, yep, you're absolutely right. I don't want to take up any more of your time, Des. I know your son and your career and everything else probably needs you. So, thank you again for coming on the show. Greatly appreciated, and you have a good rest of the evening.
Likewise.